I've just been sent yet another plot leak involving Game of Thrones Season 8. Now, as always, these videos are to be taken with a grain of salt, and I only make them for purely entertainment purposes to help us get through the long nights. That aside, this may be one of the most legitimate leaks I've ever been sent. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and begin, and as always, here is your spoiler warning. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be, you know what? Fuck it. It's the last video of the year. The like goal is going to be 4,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then make sure every notification's turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Now, this leak, just like the rest of them, has been sent to me through the DMs over on Twitter. Speaking of which, make sure you go follow me at Sir_Hunts. But this leak contains some information and plot points we've sort of seen before. I think for the most part, these repeating elements that we see in all of these leaks are just stuff that's been confirmed, and the person who's writing these are sort of just using that information to influence these to make them seem more legitimate. But like I said earlier, this is the last video of the year, and I've been providing you guys with entertainment throughout this long night, so please do me a massive favor and subscribe. The leak starts out with opening scenes that are the Night King sweeping the north. At first, we see two small children making a snow castle over what appears to be Winterfell. The older one says to the younger one, "We're leaving soon. Once Pa returns with the grain, we're leaving." Just then, a calm, cool wind can be seen sweeping over the boys' Winterfell snow castle. The children quickly stand up and begin running, but a skeleton wight runs up and spears the older boy. The younger one is able to escape. With one other survivor, they make it to just outside before the gates of Winterfell, just before the opening credits begin. We then catch up with Jon and Daenerys. They are greeted with terrible news upon arriving in the north. They decided to sail past Winterfell and immediately regret it. Daenerys and Jon are informed of the Night King's new weapon. After killing Viserion, the Night King has raised him and destroyed the wall at Eastwatch. Daenerys takes this news pretty hard. She begins weeping and looks to Jon. He comforts her, telling her that they will destroy the Night King once for all. Okay, so apparently Jon is just completely leaving out words here, but continuing on. After mentioning how once they finally defeat the Night King, they're going to stop losing loved ones, the camera sort of slowly pans around to Tyrion. He does not take this information well either. After seeing what a good dragon can do, Tyrion thinks to himself and is mortified at the thought of what a dragon not under the control of Daenerys could do. He mentions how perhaps it is best that they come up with another strategy to fight the dead. He asks Jon, aside from Dragonglass, what is the greatest weakness of the undead? Jon then mentions how if you kill a White Walker, all of the nearby dead drop. Perhaps if they take out the Night King, all of them will die since he is the one who turned everyone, Jon mentions. Just then, a fat northern lord interrupts this conversation and tells everyone that the Night King has been spotted south of the wall and is headed straight towards them. Okay, so pausing again real quick, I think just to make this sort of more coherent, the plot leak mentions that the opening scene is a scene that involves two children who are in a village nearby Winterfell. So they're building like this sort of snow castle of Winterfell. Then a cool, calm winds, which we all know follows the Night King, sweeps over that village. I guess they're supposed to say that's sort of symbolizing that the Night King is going to arrive to Winterfell. But they end up getting attacked by an undead skeleton wight, and the older brother of the two is speared in the ribs while the younger one still escapes. And then the younger one arrives at the gates of Winterfell with one other survivor. And this is the opening scene before we jump to the credits. Then we pick up with Jon and Daenerys, who decided to sail further north than Winterfell, and they arrive in what appears to be, I'm judging from the Fat Lord reference, White Harbor. So then Jon, Tyrion, and Daenerys are all informed of the news that Viserion's been raised from the dead as a white. Daenerys takes this news terribly, as to be expected, and so does Tyrion. Now that's the interesting part that I sort of want to focus on for a bit. I guess there's referencing that Tyrion has this internal flashback to the Field of Fire 2.0, and that is very true. When he was walking the fields, death and destruction that he saw was mortifying, and it honestly made him sort of back away from standing by Daenerys' side with the way that he sort of openly spoke against her burning the Tarleys. He mentioned maybe a few days in the cell would do them some good, or maybe send their ass to the wall. Either of these would have been better options than burning them, which is what Daenerys did. And to be honest, I kind of agree with Tyrion's mindset in that sense. Also, before we get back to it, that's the main reason why I chose this plot leak, is because it's got one of the most legitimate and believable ways of Tyrion's betrayal, and that's in air quotations there, but Tyrion's betrayal is something that's long since been foreshadowed on the television television show. We do know that last season, in the very last episode, he made some sort of deal with Cersei, and I'm pretty sure the details of that deal, or whatever that deal involves, it's going to be something that betrays Daenerys in some sort of way, if not just straight up treason. If you use the surrounding context clues to the parts of that scene that we were privy, well, then I'm sure it involves something with ensuring a future for Cersei's child. Tyrion probably lied a little bit to her, and he doesn't intend to uphold something. Remember, he just mentioned to Jon that sometimes telling a lie could be a good thing. But I'm certain that he made some sort of deal with Cersei that if he were to just straight up tell Daenerys or Jon, they would consider it treason. And if you'll remember, the person responsible for introducing Daenerys to Tyrion is Jorah. Jorah is the one who is, I'd say, Daenerys' first. Less emphasis on the word first there, even though we all know Captain Friendzone would have loved for that to happen. But Jorah is one of the first people to betray Daenerys. Even though he tries to do the right thing, he still sends information to Daenerys' enemies. Now, if you remember, in this episode, in Season 5, Episode 7, Jorah proclaims in the fighting pits that he has a gift for Daenerys. Now, if you do a little bit of research, the one gift that's associated with Game of Thrones is the gift of mercy, or the gift of death. So is it in those moments trying to insinuate that Jorah's death, or Jorah's gift to Daenerys, is going to be death in the form of Tyrion? Maybe. Or perhaps I just watched this TV show too much and need to get a life. One last thing we have to consider before getting back to the plot leak is the fact that in the very last episode of Season 7, Jorah actually mentions to Daenerys that one lucky person on the King's Road could end Daenerys' life with a bolt to the heart. And there's been many other instances of people mentioning killing Daenerys with an arrow. One of Daenerys' biggest enemies, YTD, is Cersei, and what is she known for? Popping up with ballistas and trying to kill Daenerys' dragon. Now, technically, Bronn did it, but he could be that one lucky hero. And the nail in the coffin there is, who did Tyrion secretly make a deal with last season? So after the scene with Jon, Daenerys, and Tyrion discussing the news of the Night King, we then jump down south. Cersei is meeting with Qyburn and Euron. She tells Euron that if they are successful in this strategy, that she will give him whatever he desires. He mentions that the Golden Company are only loyal to the ones who fill their pockets, and that after they conquer the Seven Kingdoms, they will demand much more than their initial agreed upon fee. She assures him that they will be compensated. The scene ends with Cersei proposing a toast to House Lannister and to House Greyjoy. Before she can finish the toast, a group of armed men enter the room. They have a kraken emblazoned on their armor, and it's clear that Euron has just betrayed Cersei. The Mountain draws his sword and cuts through the men like butter. Just as he beheads the third man, Euron can be seen reaching in his cloak for a Valyrian steel dagger. The Mountain moves in on Euron, and just before making contact, Euron then quickly slices at Gregor's neck and stabs him in the heart. The Mountain drops to the ground instantly, and the camera zooms out as we see Euron making it back to his ship, but he is still gravely wounded. Okay, then we jump back up north, and it's with Sansa walking up to Bran in the Godswood inside Winterfell. He ends his work, and then Sansa approaches and immediately informs her. Oh my god, this is written by someone who clearly... Bran immediately informs Sansa that Jon and Daenerys have arrived in the north, and that she has... What? Okay. Bran informs Sansa that Daenerys and Jon Snow have arrived in the north, and so has the Night King. She asked him what they should do and how they should prepare. Bran says there is nothing they can do, and that Jon and the Dragon Queen are the only ones who stand a chance in helping them to live. Bran explains further that Jon isn't who they all thought, that his destiny is to become king and unite the Seven Kingdoms. Sansa looks extremely confused and doesn't quite understand. She exclaims, "Jon is a bastard. He might be king in the north, but he is not the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms." Bran stops her and says, "No, Jon is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. His is the Song of Ice and Fire. Rhaegar wed Lyanna, and together they had Jon. Father promised Aunt Lyanna that he would raise Jon as his own and protect him from King Robert." Sansa is flabbergasted at what he says, and the scene ends with Bran making Sansa promise not to tell Jon. He mentions how it's imperative Jon not find out the truth until he is ready. Arya does not take part with this conversation, and it is revealed that she has left Winterfell after discovering of Cersei's treachery, I guess with the Golden Company, and she ends up heading straight to King's Landing to enact revenge. She is mostly absent from the first 2 episodes. So at this point, all of these events so far have taken place in the first episode, and the last scenes of episode 1 are some of the most intense. First, we catch back up with Jon and Daenerys. While en route to Winterfell, they run into the child who, from the opening scene, escaped with just one other survivor, and the child is half dead. He attempts to warn Jon, but it's too late and the child collapses in Dany's arms. Jon and Daenerys both look at each other just before the Night King's dragon can be heard screeching throughout the night sky. Jon tells Daenerys they must hurry and she needs to fly the rest of the way to Winterfell to help them escape. Jon explains that he will stay back and hold off the Night King as long as possible. Daenerys hops on Drogon and they take off. This scene is easily the most beautiful shot in all of Game of Thrones. This is what the plot leak says. The snow slow motion falls and melts as it lands on Drogon's wings, and he is mounted by Daenerys. As he is mounted by Daenerys, we can see a fire building in his belly, and he can sense Viserion nearby. So I guess he opens up his mouth and there's like flames building in the back of his throat. Daenerys yips Drogon to take off, but instead he mounts back, which then forces Daenerys to fall off. Drogon then immediately takes off and disappears into the night sky. The camera races alongside him until he is so high that he can see the Night King and the army of the dead approaching. We then zoom in on the Night King. Viserion senses Drogon getting near as well and alerts the Night King of this. Just then, the two of them take off into the night sky and the 2 dragons come face to face. The dragons share a screech and Drogon breathes flame, aiming to kill the Night King. He evades this maneuver, and we are treated to a mini boss fight between Drogon and the Night King. Drogon is able to greatly wound Viserion's wings, and because of this, the Night King retreats. Drogon then immediately flies back to Daenerys, and it is revealed that he was injured in this brawl as well. Jon and Daenerys end the episode by arriving to Winterfell. Their entrance is also another beautiful, striking scene. As they arrive, Jon calls for a feast, and at this dinner, he announces his intent to unite House Stark and House Targaryen through marriage. He gives a speech about the uncertainty of the future and mentions now is the time to make alliances pure. We need to put aside our differences and fight for the common good. The camera then zooms in on Sansa's face and it is clear that she is not pleased. Pausing right there for a brief second. Holy shit. Like what? Okay, I mean, I guess I can sort of see some of that going down. The fact that Drogon would willingly fly off and leave his mother to go do something else, that does sound somewhat along the line of the themes of Drogon, but from season 4 and before that, Daenerys, for the most part, has control over her dragons. And yes, dragons are not a slave, but Daenerys is their mother. You kind of have to do what Mama says. I don't know, maybe if Drogon could sense that Daenerys was in complete peril and danger, or maybe, you know, he sensed that his brother was near, maybe he would do something like this. But you guys let me know what you think down below in the comment section. As far as Jon Snow openly announcing that he plans to marry Daenerys, I don't think so. He does know that the North is going to be extremely apprehensive about, you know, a dragon queen coming because, you know, Northerners are very superstitious. I don't know if it would be the best idea to announce right away, but on second thought, Jon did say he's sick of the games that everyone plays, you know, the Game of Thrones. He's sick of that. So maybe him wanting to come out and just tell everyone straight away that he's decided to engage with an alliance with House Targaryen and through that he's going to get married, maybe that would be the smartest thing for him to do. So that was pretty much all of episode 1, and I'm about to start with episode 2, but since I get so sidetracked and easily distracted in these videos, I'm just going to cover the first 3 episodes, and there will be a part 2. So episodes 2 starts with Tyrion meeting with Samwell in private. Tyrion informs Samwell of his father and his brother's fates. Sam does not take this news well. Well, apparently no one takes news well. He mentions how his father has always hated him. Tyrion interrupts Sam and says that Daenerys' dragons are the only way they can win the fight against the dead, but maybe there is another way. This, I guess, just continues along with that theme of trying to figure out another way to destroy the Night King other than dragons, which sort of goes along with that theme of Tyrion going behind Daenerys' back. Tyrion explains to Sam about the devastation he saw on the Field of Fire. He also mentions how Daenerys does not control her children, and that if they are successful in destroying the threat of the dead, what's next? What will Daenerys do with her children who she cannot control? Tyrion asks Sam, who will stand against 2 dragons? Sam agrees that dragons are dangerous and that they should ask Jon what he thinks. Tyrion ends this conversation stating that Jon would not help. He's in love with the queen, and his love would prevent him from doing the right thing. Sam responds that Jon is the rightful heir. His father was Rhaegar, and that Jon has the strongest claim to the Iron Throne. Tyrion does not take this news well, and the scene ends. Okay, I don't know if it's a fucking joke with the person who wrote this plot leak by saying that this person doesn't take news well, then this person doesn't. No shit, no one's gonna take terrible news well. You don't need to keep mentioning that. And remember, this is in episode 2. We then jump down south to King's Landing. Cersei is in Qyburn's lab, and they are standing over a dead Gregor. Qyburn informs her that he is dead for good this time, and there's no bringing him back. Qyburn begins to further theorize that it might have been Euron's Valyrian steel blade. Cersei asks if there's anything they can do, and Qyburn assures her that they have another option. The scene then jumps to a couple fucking in the streets of King's Landing. Apparently, King's Landing citizens are aware of the northern threat and aware of the threat of the dead, and they've pretty much turned to chaos in the streets. We then jump back to Cersei and Qyburn standing over a new version of the Scorpion from last season. This new one is 4 times the size, and it's equipped with Valyrian steel-tipped arrows. These arrows, as Qyburn begins to explain, are designed in a way to be more deadly and hit their target 90% of the time. He mentions how even if they can't take down the dragon in size, they could at least wound it, which would give him the chance of capturing the dragon. We then cut back up to the north. Bran can be seen flying his pack of ravens to check on the Night King. He sees the army of the dead, and they've stopped. Apparently, Drogon's attack on Viserion injured him to the point where he can no longer fly. The Night King is shown standing over the wounded Viserion and whispers a prayer just before laying his hand on Viserion. This is the first time we hear the Night King speak, and the language appears to be Valyrian. I'm not even going to comment on that. I'm just going to continue on. After saying the words, a sheet of ice begins forming over Viserion, and the ice forms a new wing and reinforces the other ones. The ice forms a crown on Viserion's head, and with it, Viserion lets out a screech. Just then, Sansa walks in on Bran warging, and Bran pulls himself out of the dream state. He informs her that the Night King is now deadlier than ever, and they must act quickly. The rest of episode 2 is a somewhat montage of Jon and Daenerys' forces preparing Winterfell for an invasion. The last scene is Tyrion meeting with Varys to inform him of Jon's lineage. Tyrion and Varys agree that Daenerys cannot control her dragons, and that after the Night King is dealt with, they would have served their purpose, but if the Night King was to gain another dragon, they would surely lose and could not stand any chance of defeating him. Tyrion says that the two of them are alone in their sentiment, and that this conversation would likely be considered treason and could get them killed. Varys reassures him that they are not alone, and just then, Sansa walks out. Sansa begins mentioning that Jon and Daenerys' love could ruin everything. Even if they are successful in defeating the Night King, the Seven Kingdoms will never accept an incestuous relationship. She points to Cersei and Jaime. They all agree that something must be done. Tyrion mentions how removing a dragon from play may be the best option to keep it from the Night King. Varys then asks how he intends to do that, and Tyrion says there are ways, and then the scene cuts to black. I want to comment on that so bad, but for time's sake, I'm just going to continue on. Episode 3 is all action. The entire episode is non-stop wall-to-wall battle scenes. The opening scene is a horn being blown from the walls of Winterfell, informing everyone that the dead have arrived. A lone White Walker can be seen approaching the gates. It appears that he is carrying something. Just as he gets close, he stops and then suddenly launches what he was carrying. The mysterious item hits the barracks of Winterfell. It is revealed that the item that he was carrying was a severed head. Just then, the army of the dead begin their attack. Whites can be seen forming a wall of corpses, similar to how they did in Hardhome. Just then, white giants begin running towards the gates of Winterfell. The forces of the living begin their assault too. Jon commands their army to release the dragon glass-tipped arrows, and just as Jon informs them, the men begin to lower the sweeper, which is this metal device that is designed to clear the dead from the walls of Winterfell. It's a rounded spike device that rotates. Okay, so obviously, this person has been paying attention to the confirmed spoilers. You can see this device in this picture right here. But the battle rages on for 27 minutes uninterrupted. We then jump to Euron, who is approaching Winterfell with the Golden Company. The leader of the Sellsword Company asks Euron what is going on. He explains that they are going to help fight an undead army. The leader of the group becomes increasingly angry until Euron slits his throat. Euron then informs the rest of the Golden Company that if they have something they want to say, then speak now or forever. Just as he says this, a small group of dead begin attacking Euron and the Golden Company. Euron is knocked off of his war elephant and falls to the ground, getting knocked unconscious. We then jump down to King's Landing. Cersei has received word of the battle at Winterfell. Jaime, who has been MIA up until now, appears and begins badgering Cersei for the choices she made. He explains that if they hadn't betrayed Ned and had Robert killed, maybe they wouldn't have lost every single child. He begins to blame Cersei for everything. She interrupts him and notices that something is off, and then asks him how did he get that dagger. Just then, the camera pans down and we see the cat's paw dagger in Jaime's belt. The camera then zooms out to outside of Cersei's chamber's door, and we see that her guards are slumped over dead. It is revealed that Arya is wearing Jaime's face. She attempts to run, but is knocked unconscious by Arya, so Cersei attempts to run. She then regains consciousness, and it is revealed that Cersei has been locked in a cell by Arya, and Arya plans to take her face. What? The last scenes of episode 3 are the Battle of Winterfell. 5 cast members die in the chaos. Grey Worm, Pod, Gilly, Baby Sam, and Jorah. Most of the characters are split up by the end, and the Night King successfully destroys most of Winterfell. Alright, with that being said, I'm going to save most of my thoughts for that for part 2, which will in fact be coming to you lovely people's screens next year. We've released well over 100 videos on this channel, and I do plan on continuing my theme of keeping you all entertained throughout this long night, all the way up until Season 8 premieres in April. So please, do me a favor and make sure you subscribe to this channel, and then turn your notifications on so that way you're alerted every single time I drop a video. Super special shout out to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. Also, super special shout out to every single person watching this video right now. Without you folks, these kinds of videos would not be possible. Alright, I want to thank you all so much. My name's Mark, and my birthday is January 1st. This has been Sir Hunt's Long Nights Reviews.